Here now with reaction is the author of the upcoming book, Come On, Man, Fox News contributor Joe Concha, along with former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown and Fox and Friends weekend co-host Rachel Campos-Duffy. Scott, let me start with you, because when I hear about the importance of keeping gas high and oil high because we're fighting Putin through Ukraine, isn't it true that as long as the oil prices are high, Putin is getting even more money, and this is funding his adventurism, that the way to stop him would be, in fact, to bring oil prices down, not to keep them high?
Well, we know when oil was below $50, $40 a barrel and even less, that Russia was hurting. Yes, you're absolutely right. But, you know, this liberal New World Order, another clueless Biden representative, newsflash, the world is not all liberal. There are certain parts of the world that are. But in the United States of America, which is where we are, we need to focus on our needs and not other people's needs right now. We're paying now a little less because it's Independence Day weekend, so that, you know, doing the manipulation. But I just paid $5.15 last week, came back $1.72 when I got back from being the ambassador in New Zealand. And Tammy, it's no secret here. President Biden said that he was going to end fossil fuels in America. Well, I guess that's okay. He's doing a good job, but I guess he doesn't really care about the other parts of the world, because he's going to Venezuela, obviously dealing with Iran, dealing with the Saudis, making their oil industries a booming industry. So he's creating jobs everywhere else but here.
Yeah.
38% approval rating, 85% of the people say we're going in the wrong direction, and he's got to get his act together. This administration is doomed, and it's not doing anything right. Tell me one thing, please.
Yeah, dooming all the rest of us with it. Joe, the title of your book is perfect, because it should be our exclamation. It's like, come on, man. You saw his performance there, embarrassing at NATO, noting the nature of as long as this takes, making a fool of himself, but also harming our national security in the meantime. What's your take on what Biden's up to at this point?
Besides that, Tammy, everything went great, right? Scott put up that stat before, about 85% of voters don't like the direction of the country. I'd love to do some keg stands over the weekend with those 15% who thinks things are going in the right direction. Who are these people? But seriously, you see now the press is turning on Mr. Biden, I keep reading. You know, that should have happened the minute he actually tried to sell the country on this notion that if you spend trillions upon trillions of additional dollars on top of the trillions we already have, and you flood the system, somehow he made this argument that that will lower inflation and the deficit. And Brian Deese, who somehow is the chief economic advisor to the president of the United States, he said the quiet part out loud, right? That this is all intentional. The attempted transitioning of this economy and energy policy to the new liberal world order. It sounds like something out of the Star Wars Senate. I guess that's the plan. Fortunately, Tammy, we have elections in this country, and come November, as many Democratic strategists will tell you, voters are overwhelmingly going to reject this liberal world order and restore order to the political universe. So we have that going for us, which is nice.
We certainly hope so, because, the system seems to be effectively fine with what's going on. Rachel, this is what I get concerned about, is that there are people running the administration. It's clearly not Joe Biden. And they think all of this is fine. They keep putting him in front. They keep arranging, whether it's like this kind of a press conference where he refused to really take many questions at all. So there's people within the establishment that are moving this along. Is that something we need to be concerned about post-November and the midterms?
Of course, there's 3 years left of this administration. So, yeah, we can put the brakes on it in the midterm. But believe me, there is a lot more damage that can be done. I do like that this guy slipped up and told the truth. Because remember, Tammy, we were called conspiracy theorists when we talked about, the liberal world order, or we said the Great Reset. We know it's true now. They are totally willing to impoverish us. And it's not just because they have, an obsession with environmentalism and they want to transition us to fossil fuels, out of fossil fuels and into, energies that will make us more dependent on China. Yes, that's part of it, but it is bigger. It is a Great Reset. They are trying to give us, what Klaus Schwab wants at Davos with the World Economic Forum, which is a Chinese system, a social credit score, a Chinese type of capitalism where the top has capitalism and wealth, the elites, the state, and the rest of us live under socialism. This is a big, big deal, but we're starting to see the curtain open up, and we're starting to see behind, and we know what's going on.
Yeah, Scott, doesn't it matter as a result who gets elected in November? The statement, the volume of the statement that is made in the midterm elections, is that in your time in Washington and as an ambassador, have you found that that's the thing that makes a difference when it comes to what politicians are willing to do, like maybe finally listen to the American people?
Yeah, listen, it's going to be a very serious warning shot, especially leading into the presidency. Everyone's saying there's going to be this huge red wave. Well, that's true if we don't screw it up like we tend to do and not unite behind the candidate who may not be your candidate, but it's a Republican who may be, according to Ronald Reagan, your 60, 70, 80% friend, not your 100% friend or your 100% enemy, as he would say. But listen, you find, just getting back to something we said earlier about the press, you know, listen, my wife is a former journalist, and, you know, I have a lot of respect for the press, but you got to do your job, according to Bill Belichick. Just do your job. Hold them accountable between the cue cards and the ushering in and out and the amazing handling of the president. It is embarrassing. It's dangerous. It's affecting our national security, and it's got to stop. But when we look at the farm team behind it, we're going to go to Harris or Pelosi. No, we have some very serious issues, and we need somebody strong to deal with them, and we're not.
Yeah, look, Joe, and this is your bailiwick in a sense with the media. Isn't Biden having a list of people that he goes to? Doesn't that tell us that the media is colluding effectively with the Biden administration in, you know, making sure they know if certain someone is picked on and chosen for a question, that it's either going to be easy or there's not going to be a hard follow-up or that person can be trusted? Isn't that part of the problem here with especially with the White House press corps? They complain about access, but my goodness, haven't they been facilitating this debacle?
Yeah, it's funny when you mention access, Tammy, that the guy who was president before Joe Biden was probably the most accessible president that we've ever had, right? He took more questions than probably his three predecessors combined. Sometimes press conferences going on for 2.5 hours, and yet the press complained that, you know, he was trying to destroy the free press. Well, right. I'm pretty sure compared to what we're seeing now with this president who from day one has had that list and then is smart enough to share, oh, by the way, they gave me a list of reporters that I have to call on. Again, saying the quiet part out loud. But it's not just Joe Biden, and Scott touched on it just a second ago as far as the farm team. Try getting a flight somewhere this weekend without it being canceled or greatly postponed or costing you a fortune, because we have a transportation secretary in Pete Buttigieg who's supposed to be maybe the plan B, who has no business being in this position as transportation secretary, who doesn't have a clue how to fix the problem despite his, you know, vast experience as the mayor of a small town in Indiana, Tammy. Yeah. So yeah, that's the whole team in general. It's not just Biden. It's all the adults that are supposed to be back in the room, and it's amateur hour.
And let me tell you, the two people that represent the Democrat Party, the Democrat base, really, are Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So that is the answer for them. But my goodness, the condition they're in now is quite a disaster. Joe, Rachel, Scott, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Now,
hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.